Great. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an understanding of who we are as an organization. So to start off with, like, why does it matter? Why are you here today? Why does it matter that you build a culture of content creators within your organization? And these are just some of the reasons why. I'm sure you know that's why you're here, but there's, it's authentic if you have lots of different people and voices who are creating your content, which also then helps with transparency and building trust with your supporters. So, if you've got a service delivery staff member who's creating content for you that shows the transparency, kind of behind the scenes work. It helps build trust with your supporters and your audiences. It then also connects your supporters with all aspects of your work. So it's not just the voice of the comms team, it's not just the voice of fundraising. It is actually the voices of all the people connected to your organization, and you're showing different viewpoints and different perspectives of what it is that you do and the impact that you have. And ultimately, that will connect your supporters with all the different bits that you cover, the things that you probably don't even think about, which actually your supporters will find interesting. It's budget friendly, obviously. It's, especially creating content using phones is very cost effective rather than getting in production companies. So the more that you can be doing that, the better use of your budget. And also it just takes the pressure off the comms team. I mean, especially I think when I found when I was working in a small charity that you're kind of expected to do everything. And as well as doing all the other comms, it's like, now you've got to go out and capture content as well and then edit that together. And actually it's just really helpful if you've got other people doing that for you rather than, yeah, just it just being you all the time. So the first step I found when we're working with people to kind of get them to encourage them to capture content within your organization, or when I was working in charities, now that we work with charities, is the most important thing is you just need to firstly get people to care. So the first thing to do is always start with your mission. So always talk about it in terms of what you're trying to achieve as an organization, and try and get people to see beyond the barriers that they have in terms of, time or confidence, and actually start with, this is what we're trying to achieve together as an organization, and this is why we're here, and this is why we love the work that we do. And to achieve that mission, we have to be able to fundraise, we have to be able to recruit volunteers, we have to be able to talk about our services. So you're kind of giving it a bit of context before you even go in. So it's with the ask to create the content. It's starting with your mission and the reason why you're all here, and getting you all on the same page that I'm asking you to do this, or I'm asking you to create content, or we're asking you to co-create because we want to be able to achieve our mission together, and this is a really good way to do that. And the way to do that as well is to change the way that you're even asking. So I would never say to someone like, can you go and film something for me? I would start with the reason why. So it's, we need to raise more money to be able to provide this service. Could you go and help us could you help us to do that? What do you think we should be showing people? Like, what do you think we should be capturing? So even just changing the way that you ask, you're not asking people to create content for you. You're asking people to be involved and to feel part of the reason that you're creating that content. And that will just help them feel like they're part of it, that it's more like a collaborative thing. And they're again just coming back to the mission and the bigger picture, that they're actually thinking about what this is going to achieve, not just the actual doing of it. Then I just, reiterate to people that it doesn't need to be perfect. So, some of the best content, and I'm going to show you an example in a minute, but some of the best user generated content that I've seen from organizations, especially taken by kind of service delivery staff or clients, is it's just on the phone, it's a bit jumpy, the frame is not perfect, but that doesn't matter because it's actually content is king. And if you are trying to be more authentic, transparent, then actually the less polished look works really well. So I'd really just reiterate to people within your organization that actually it doesn't need to be perfect. Co-create wherever possible. So I kind of touched on that a little bit, but just make sure you feel like you're bringing people along for the journey. So if it's, clients, or if it's service staff, or if it's volunteers, don't just say to them, here's what I want you to create. Like, ask them for their opinions on it, ask them what they would, what they're comfortable in filming, what they're not comfortable in filming, especially if it's, people filming themselves, talking about something that's a bit personal. It's really important that they feel like they're part of that process and they've helped to shape what it is that you're creating. So, if you're having a staff meeting and you're saying, we really want to show more people about this aspect of our services, what do you think that we should be showing them? You're bringing people along for that journey and they're having creative input, which means they'll have more ownership, they'll be more involved in it, they'll be more likely to get it done rather than you just saying, can you go out and film this, please? Um, yeah, so then co-creation is really important. Then it's also really important that you are clear about what you need and how long it will take, and then show examples. So some of the barriers I found is people will say, I don't have time to do it, even though if you say like it would take you 10 minutes, like they don't understand how long these things take. And I know I'm not creative, I'm not very good, but if you actually show examples, then it gives people a really clear idea of what it is that you'd like them to capture. So as much as you want to co-create and have creative input, like for some people, they just there's a creative block, or they just can't think in that way. So having examples is really helpful as well, and just being clear about what you need and why you need it as well. Like going back to that, starting with your mission, that's really important. Consider what your audiences are as well. So before you even get to start creating content, like think about what it is that you're creating it for and who you're creating it for, because it would be different depending on what your audience is. So if it's something about a service, then it's going to be part of a fundraising video or fundraising content that you're probably more likely you're going to do it in landscape and you're going to pop it on Facebook. Whereas if it's a younger audience, it's something that's a bit more educational, informative, then portrait, TikTok. That's more like the style of filming that you're going to want. So before you ask people to capture stuff, think about who your audience is and how you're going to how you're going to get them, what you want them to capture with the audience in mind. And even that even think frames like what you're going to ask them to film as well. So if it's your audience is, for example, new corporate supporters, then obviously you're going to want to talk about the benefits to corporate supporters to support in your organization. Whereas if it's an informative video about if you come into our services, this is what you could expect, then you're going to be speaking to that audience differently. Encourage people to partner up. Like we've found this really successful, that it's less intimidating, that if you're asking someone to go out and film stuff that they're on their own, like it's better if you're asking them to go into pairs. So you can have someone doing like the producer role who's asking the questions and making sure like everything's running to schedule, and then you have someone who's just actually capturing the content. So there's like two different parts, and it just means that they're kind of creatively sharing the load, but also it just makes it a bit more fun, because as well you want to try and make this fun for people. And then finally is just the full circle. So just making sure that when the people have sent you content, that you report back on it. Like you let people know, thanks to you, we posted that on Facebook, it got 20 shares, someone donated, it performed really well, or so they feel like again they've been part of the full process and it's collaborative. It's not just one thing. It's not just like you're asking them to do something, you're actually bringing them along for the full circle, for the full journey. And this is what I recommend doing as well, is to save you time, is just put together, I call it just like a one pager that just has, for each time you're asking people to capture content so that they've got something to refer to, is firstly include like the why again. So why are we asking you to make this? Then how much footage you're going to need. So I've done it before where I haven't stipulated this, and some people might send you 20 seconds and other people might send you an hour. But actually, it's good to think about how much footage do I actually need and how much time have I got to go through this. Give them guidance on what to film, and obviously, hopefully they'll give input on that as well as what should be filmed. Have a shot list. So you don't just want like interviews, you also want bits of B-roll that can help bring that to life. So it's really good for you to have a shot list that they can kind of tick off. Have a list of questions that they can ask people, like if it's for an interview. So if you're doing a video about volunteering, a question might be, what do you love about volunteering with us? What would you say to someone that was thinking of volunteering for us? And then think about like what your evergreen content is. And this is the kind of content that you should be capturing every time you've got someone capturing content for you or you're doing it yourselves. It's just stuff that can help build your bank of content that you can keep coming back to. So in that, I would recommend whenever someone's filming content, you ask them something like, describe our charity in 2 sentences. What makes our charity special? What would you say to someone who is thinking of volunteering? What would you say to someone who was thinking of donating? and then just, like footage of things like signage, your logo, your building, someone opening a door. Like, there should always be a list of evergreen content that you're capturing that you can fall back on when maybe you haven't had time to capture anything, or something, you need extra footage to supplement something else. Then I would just cover some technical tips. I'm going to go through these at the very end, so you've got like a bit of technical guidance as well. But I just keep it really simple using the acronym SNAF, which is sound, natural light, atmosphere, and framing. And I'll go through those in more detail. But just giving people technical tips as well, because they'll say, oh, no, I don't know how to do it. It'll be an absolute mess. And so that then helps them to kind of think, oh, no, it's okay. I've got some technical tips. And also it just improves the quality of the content, because again, it would be really sad if you actually get people to film something for you and then it gets delivered and it's just not good. Just touching briefly on consent. So just making sure that anybody that's featured on camera has given their consent, and that you have a process for that. So if people are capturing content for you, that there's a really simple and easy consent process that's rigorous, obviously, but that they can access easily. And then just make sharing it really simple. So include how to submit it. That could be via email, it could be through a Dropbox link, WeTransfer. I personally find that WhatsApp is a really easy way for people to send footage. And they tend to send more because they're just kind of filming it on their phone and then sending it straight over. It does compress the quality slightly, but if it's just user generated stuff that you're creating, then I don't think that's a massive issue. So yeah, just make it, just these one pages, a really helpful way for when people are going out filming. They've got something to refer back to, and you're less likely to reduce that risk of, oh, okay, well, they didn't quite get what I asked, or they didn't quite get what we thought that we were going to capture, and the quality isn't great, and oh no, they didn't get that person's consent form. So it just reduces those risks for you, and you can just create like a template and just fill in the details for each one, so it shouldn't take up too much of your time. Now I'm going to show you a little video that we created with the Child Brain Injury Trust, where we coached their team to capture content of like a day in the life of style, to show you an example of, like, it doesn't need to be perfect, but we did this for them. So we did a session with them first, with their team, about the why. So this was their service deliveries team, like the why we were doing it. So it was a fundraising campaign, like what impact the footage would have. We then asked them, like, what kind of things do you think you should be filming? They came up with the ideas, and then we put together this one pager for them and went through some technical tips as well. So I'll just show you this as a little example.
Morning, my name's Emma and I'm the ABI coordinator for the Child Brain Injury Trust. So today I'm off to the Leeds General Infirmary Hospital, where I'm meeting Mum and the little boy this morning.
Hello, I am a star.
You are a star? Why are you a star, Atticus?
Because I am brave and I have needles.
Good morning everybody, my name's Sharon. I'm an acquired brain injury coordinator working for the Child Brain Injury Trust. An early start for me, I'm en route to one of the parent carer community support hubs that I host. We're all set up for our craft activities. We've got some jewellery making.
In therapy with Izzy.
Hello,
and Dolly the horse.
My name's Sam. I'm an ABI coordinator for the Child Brain Injury Trust. I started bright and early to get down to Royal Manchester Children's Hospital to attend the neuro rehab.
My name's Dahlia. I am the Services Manager for Educational Services and Community Inclusion. The more and more that I deliver these workshops, it just keeps showing just how invested practitioners are in fully supporting children, young people and families.
Just come off the phone to a new school who I've been in touch with, so I'll send this across to schools to give them a little bit of an idea about who should be involved when a child is returning to school, and a little bit more about the process.
I'm Nicola, Child Brain Injury Trust Coordinator for the East. I'm off to a local primary school this morning, and we are going to be delivering a sibling support session.
Hello everyone, my name is Pamela Bell and I'm one of the Acquired Brain Injury Coordinators here at the Child Brain Injury Trust in Northern Ireland. At the Child Brain Injury Trust, we believe that every child and every family deserves the opportunity to live a joyful and fulfilled life.
I don't know where we would be, to be honest, without the Child Brain Injury Trust now.
Raising money for every child, every family.
Every child, every family.
Every child, every family. Every child, every family.
Every child, every family.
Every child, every every family.
Every child, every family.
Every child, every family.
Every child, every family.
Yeah, so I think it's good just to show examples like that to your teams, just so they can see like it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't need to be this really polished thing. It's more just about authenticity and them talking about their experiences and what they do that day, and that like call to action of them all sort of saying together that the fundraising appeal. So yeah, so once you've done like your you've done your one pager, you've got kind of people bought in, and then people are starting to create content for you, hopefully. How do you then make that part of your culture? So what we would always recommend is that you build it into the project planning sessions. So when you're having your budget sessions or your project planning at the beginning, then you always ask the question of what content could we be creating from this? So if you're about to open up a new service, or you wanting to recruit some more volunteers, like how are we going to create content, and make sure like everybody has input on that, not just the comms team, so that you can actually work that into their timetables, their schedules, get the team's input on like what that content would look like, how plausible it is for them to do it, what support they need from you. So again, it's just all about kind of doing it collaboratively, but planning ahead, so it's not just, oh no, can you go and get this for us next week? It's like, okay, well, we know this is coming up, and let's plan it into our thing. And then you can do check-ins, like, there's the deadline for content creation is this today, like how are you getting on with that? And just make it part of the culture of this. We're planning a new project, and content creation is part of that. It's really good to try and have a champion in departments. So if there's someone who is really engaged and really loves capturing content, like make them the champion and ask them to encourage others to do it, because they're more likely to listen to their peers than they are the comms team. So yeah, try and have a champion that you can also celebrate as well, and you could have like champion meetings where you just talk to them. Have an accessible calendar that can be added to. So again, you're kind of giving teams input in that they can add stuff to it if they've got something coming up, or they've had an idea, that you can then add that to an update as and when needed. And if there's something urgent coming up, like a last minute fundraising appeal or a capital appeal, then you can add that into the calendar, and people can see that and help you capture content for it. Evergreen content I've kind of talked about already, but I would always just encourage, have that in your bank, that every person who's capturing content for you knows what evergreen content is and what it is that you want them to capture. But then also be prepared for unplanned moments as well. So make sure that you can be flexible enough that it's okay to just capture stuff off the cuff, or it's okay for you to see a little moment happening and capture that. And that should be encouraged and celebrated as well, for people kind of being able to just capture things that feel like it's a good moment. And then also figure out a way that how you can measure success and celebrate people for capturing content, and make it like a thing that is valued within your organization, and that they can understand what the impact of that is. So yeah, like it's a bit of a long process, but I think once you get into the habit of it's habit creating really. So once you get into the habit of content creation just sits alongside the projects that you're running, then it does really become this thing that does just start happening. And once you start celebrating people and you start telling them about the impact that it's having, then they really will buy into it, because people work in the third sector because they care about the work they're doing. So if you're able to show them that this is a way for them to do more of that, then obviously, hopefully, they'd also want to be able to be part of that. So now I'm going to hand over to Eleshea, who's going to talk to us about her experience of this within Amnesty International.
Thanks, Emma. Right, I'll just share my screen. And let me know if you can see this. You see that? Perfect. Thank you. So hi, everyone. As Emma mentioned, my name is Eleshea. I'm the social media officer at Amnesty International, and I work for the IS. So you might have like Amnesty UK or Amnesty Hong Kong, but I work for essentially the headquarters. My role includes doing planned day-to-day and reactive posting across 5 different channels. That's Blue Sky, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and X. And I think people always think because it's Amnesty and it's quite a big company that we have a massive comms team or social media team, but actually there's only two of us, in addition to a reactive video producer. So we're constantly thinking about low capacity and low budget ways we can create content and keep our audiences engaged. So what I'm going to be talking about today is essentially sharing why EGC has been such a game changer for Amnesty storytelling, and hopefully give some practical advice on how you can build a culture where every colleague that wants to is confident to share their voice in whatever format. So in terms of what I'll be going over in the next 10 or so minutes, I'm going to look at how your colleagues can be your best storytellers, and why in a world of increasing distrust that your colleagues are your best storytellers. We're going to look at kind of common challenges that we came across and that other people and colleagues in the sector come across when looking at employee-generated content. We're going to look at what success looks like, and success, obviously we'll go into this later, but it's not necessarily going viral, it's providing value. And then how to build a culture where content creation is second nature. I think, as Emma said, whenever you introduce a new process, it's the first bit, the teething stage, that can be a bit difficult, but then it does become second nature, and not a nice to have, but something that's included. So in terms of the social landscape of today, starting off on a bit of a pessimistic note, but people are losing trust in brands. So people are losing trust in charities, they're losing trust in governments, and this is actually particularly true for young people, but we're seeing this across the board. The way that people interact with traditional media and social media is changing, and we can't expect trust to be earned by a big logo. We have to earn trust and earn through being authentic and find a way around that. Employee posts get shared up to 24 times more than a branded post. I always find this so interesting and really encouraging. And I think one thing, I've been in the sector for about 5 years. I've always worked for charity, but one thing I did find is that we are all great at the work we do and we do fantastic work, but we're not very good about talking about our jobs, right? And so the social impact industry can be quite inaccessible for young people or people in different industries to get into. So I think audiences find it really interesting where colleagues are talking about their jobs and what that entails. It also shows the diversity of roles that are available in this industry. It gets 8 times more engagement also than content shared through brand accounts. So both of these just show that audiences seem to respond a lot more to those kind of human voices that aren't coming from a brand page. And it's certainly something that we found when we share our colleagues' work, or engage with our colleagues on social media. People are also turning away from the news. So over a third of people say that they sometimes or often actively avoid the news. And with things like Amnesty, obviously, we're posting different news and reacting to news every day. But what we find is that people are turning away from the news not because they're apathetic or they don't care enough. It's actually because they care too much or they care a lot and they don't know, or they feel a bit helpless in terms of what they can do to help. So we've been asking ourselves the question of how can we adapt our content using our colleagues to actually show people a problem, but present it in a hope-based way instead of encouraging or making people turn away because it's too despair-mongering. And finally, people are on social media to be entertained. So over 73% of people, their reason for going on social media is entertainment. So we find ourselves asking this question: if people are turning away from the news and they're going on social media for relief, not resistance, how do we make our content so engaging and empowering that we're encouraging people to interact and essentially share our values? We asked ourselves the question, what if every Amnesty colleague became a storyteller for human rights? I think all of us have really, really interesting jobs. We have things like researchers on death penalty. We have campaigners on older people's rights. So we really wanted to show the diversity of these roles on social media. Emma's already covered this, but EGC content really builds trust and authenticity. So you might have a viral piece of content in whatever context viral means to you, that performs exceptionally well, but it might not get your audiences to stick around long term. Whereas EGC content, you might not, sometimes we don't see as big numbers as we do compared to our other content, but it is building that long-term value and that long-term relationship with audiences, which ultimately is really important. When you do EGC content, you're allowing yourself to reach new audiences. So you're not only interacting with your own audience, but you're also interacting with your colleagues' network as well. So you're reaching new audiences that have different niche interests. And obviously, it's relevant to Amnesty or whatever your charity is. It's authentic human voices bringing human rights issues to life in a way that the brand tone can't or doesn't do as well. So in terms of challenges that I found when speaking to colleagues and working on this with them was a real fear of getting it wrong or saying the wrong thing. And I think, as Emma mentioned, something that's so important to communicate is that this content doesn't have to be polished. And in fact, the reason that it earns that trust is because it's unpolished. It shows that real human story and human voice behind it. There's a lack of confidence in storytelling, and there's this belief that content creation is only for the comms team. And, we've worked really hard to overcome these barriers with people, and it's been a process, but it's becoming second nature. And I think the final one is something that we all experience in the charity sector. There's a lack of capacity. People are so busy with their own roles that they see content creation and content gathering as another job on top of that. So it's essentially our role as a comms team to help make that as easy and accessible and rewarding as possible. So these are a couple of examples of our employee generated content. So from left to right, we've got a report explainer. So this is Candy. She is our researcher on, well, she was at the time on business and human rights. So we did a project on forced evictions in the DRC. And she essentially, we created the video, the background video for her, but she used the green screen effect on TikTok to narrate the video. And audiences found it really, really interesting. And we actually found that when we had just a video with text on screen versus when we had Candy on screen explaining the story, Candy's video got a lot more engagement, people asking questions in the comments, and people really interacting with this issue. Then personal reflections as well. So it's really important that employee generated content is not always, it's a two-way street. So people aren't just doing a favor for you, but you're showing them how actually, if like Mario, for example, who's very active on LinkedIn, us sharing it to the Amnesty page that has over 500,000 followers or interacting with it is really nice for Mario, because Mario gets to interact with new audiences as well. And we can also show how passionate our colleagues are. So this is Mario reflecting on how he first got into human rights. And then finally, we've got Lisa and Laurie. There's some X and Blue Sky posts that we often just amplify and repost, because these are the people, in Laurie's case, he's a media manager, and in Lisa's a researcher. These are the people that have worked really close on these report launches, and they are sharing an Amnesty post, but with their own reflections. So the point of this is that EGC content doesn't necessarily have to just be videos. It can be text, it can be voice notes, it can be tweets, it can be selfies. It's people giving us that content and us creating something out of it that audiences will find really interesting. We always want to go for with EGC content, or with any content, to be honest, when we're working in the social impact industry, is value over virality. So does this post have a purpose? Will someone look at it and maybe want to volunteer for your charity, or want to donate or sign a petition? Ultimately, the purpose of all of our posts is to engage someone in the human rights issue and then maybe encourage them to take an action. So this is an example of another bit of content that we did. So this was specifically for LinkedIn. And happy to share this afterwards, but this was my outreach email, which I sent across to the organization, and basically expressed our want to share people's jobs and how interesting they are, and giving them prompts to choose from, because that kind of solves or gets around that issue of people feeling that, I'm not creative or things like that. You're giving them a prompt, but also giving the option that they can include anything that they want to include within obvious limits. And then we shared a picture of them on LinkedIn. We did this across loads of different roles, and asked people, our audiences in the comments, if they wanted to ask a question about that person's job. Another thing that we're also planning, which is similar to the video Emma shared, is a day in the life series with a different person. So someone in the tech team or someone in our legal team talking about what their day entails, and basically, encouraging our audiences to ask questions about their role. And we found that it's really, really engaging with audiences. So in terms of building this culture, to build this strong EGC culture, it's not enough to just encourage colleagues to share content. We have to make it accessible and rewarding and replicable. So creating filming guidelines is the best thing that you can do to have that kind of bank of content that we've been speaking about. So it's just, this is a screenshot of something that we use for the green screen effect on TikTok. And it saves you just having to individually explain it to someone every time. For things like graphics or selfies, like that, the Human Rights at Work series, we provided templates on Canva. Canva's a really, really good tool. It's often free or discounted for charities, and you can provide templates for your colleagues to be able to essentially talk about their specific niche if they wanted to. Skill sharing is also really important. So we've done a Skillshare session for the whole organization on TikTok. We've got one coming up on LinkedIn. And the aim with this is not just to get colleagues to give us content, but it's also to help them feel confident enough to build up their own personal brand or page if they wanted to. So it's mutually beneficial. And then prompts work wonders to spark content ideas. And what we find is that a lot of the time people will go from prompts and then get their own ideas, and that just gives this really good hub of creativity. This is my most important piece of advice for this kind of EGC content, or anything new that you're really starting. It's sharing the wins and starting with why. So when I started out the employees or Human Rights at Work series, I spoke about my own issues with getting into the social impact industry and the fact that I didn't know a lot about the jobs there, and wanting to share how interesting these jobs were, and essentially help make Amnesty and human rights more accessible to our audiences. So always start with why, and then avoiding the post and ghost. So using people for their content and then never following up afterwards. So these are a couple of screenshots of things that we like, feedback that we've given. And yeah, as Emma mentioned, the more that you do this, you find that people will then come to you themselves and say, listen, I'm working on this. I'd really like to share this, or I think this would be good for your audiences. And I think in other times, even better if you can include screenshots of comments of what people have said, because it's not just flattering, it's really motivating for the people who are involved in this content. Like, we do hard work, all of us, in like a very challenging industry, and it's really nice to be recognized for that work. So yeah, it's really important to give that feedback. So in terms of looking ahead to the landscape and how we will start to interact with EGC culture, the traditional media landscape is changing. People don't interact with social media in the same way that they did before, and it's really important that as a charity industry doing this really important work, we can kind of cut through the noise there. Engagement is happening in private. So what this means is that social media channels, like for example Instagram, Twitter, like things like that. X, sorry, still can't get used to that. Um, they are prioritizing content that gets shared with friends, so shared or saved. They're moving away from valuing content according to likes and follows. And this is why I say that value is so much more important over virality. You want to create any bit of content that you create, but especially EGC content, you want to create it so it's either so interesting that people save it for later to watch again because you've given them that piece of education, or they want to share it with their friends. The algorithm will boost that content, and so it will get seen by more people. So you're really, really sharing your value there, and building that long-term engagement. And finally, we're going to have a whole new donor base in the future, and the way that young people donate and interact is completely different. So, for example, Gen Z audiences are actually the most generous audience in terms of financial donations, but they're the least likely to regularly contribute because they really want authenticity. They want to contribute to certain issues or issues that are big in the news at a certain time. So it's really important that we can adapt. And the one thing that will never change throughout all of these social media changes is our values and the passion of the people that work behind these subjects. And so, yeah, it's really, really important to utilize that. Colleagues, when we don't have, like at Amnesty, we don't have a budget to hire influencers, even though we know they have this big network. But actually, your colleagues can be your influencers, and they probably or will definitely do a better job because no one knows the work better than they do themselves. So yeah, that's it from me. I'll have a little look through the chat if there's any questions, but yeah, I hope that helps and provides a bit of practical guidance.
That was super helpful. Thanks, Alicia. I'll just go back to sharing my screen. Yeah, I think there are a few questions, but hopefully I'm just going to go through a little bit more now, and then we can have a bit of time for questions. So here's just those technical tips that I kind of covered very briefly, but I think it's just helpful in the same way that Alicia said about, like, you know, giving people templates and make it as easy as possible for people to share content or to create content for you. So in terms of video, here's just some technical tips that we share. It's an anagram, which I think anagram? That's not the right word, acronym, that people, you know, find easy to remember. So sound, natural light, atmosphere, framing, and also just in brackets, don't forget for consent. Firstly, though, you want people to kind of prepare their phone properly. So make sure that they clean the phone lens before shooting. You don't want it all smudgy and blurry. Decide whether you want people to film in landscape or portrait. So I would always say, unless it's for Reels or TikTok, film in landscapes. It just gives you more options after in the edit. But if it is just going straight onto Reels or it is just going straight to TikTok, portrait's fine. Make sure that their phone's charged and has enough storage space, and then just when they are shooting, that it's in airplane mode to kind of avoid any disruptions while they're capturing stuff. Sound, so make sure that they find like a quiet space, and you can use headphones that have a lot of their wireless headphones have inbuilt microphones, so if it is somewhere really windy, they can use their wireless headphones to kind of record voice as well. And just make sure that they test a bit of audio. Then, you know, while they're filming something, ask people what they had for breakfast, or film themselves asking, you know, this is what I like to do in my spare time, and then go back and watch it before they start actually doing the main filming, because again, you can kind of fix bad, shaky, badly framed stuff, but sound is really hard to fix in the edit. So just make sure that sound is like the key thing that they try and get right if they are filming people speaking. Natural light is always better than any like artificial lighting. So if possible, shoot outdoors or be near windows, or yeah, just kind of be as much in natural light as possible. So you see those two images there. There's someone who's kind of stood behind a window, in front of a window, sorry, and the light sort of reflecting on their back, which causes a shadow, which means you can't really see their face, and it just all looks a bit dark. Whereas in the one and below, they kind of stood next to the window, so the natural light sort of filtering in, and it's a lot more nicer to look at, and you can actually see the person's face. So yeah, so if they are indoors, like position lights or be as close to natural light as possible, and just always avoid using the phone light, because it just makes it look like you're watching a horror film. Then atmosphere. So I think if you're doing something that's a bit informative and you're delivering direct information, like filming in portrait mode, and you're in the middle of the frame, is fine, because you're delivering something important and you just want people to pay attention to what you're saying. But if you're doing something where, you know, you're filming maybe a community workshop or something like an event, actually being in the atmosphere is really important, and actually filming people with stuff going on in the background actually builds a lot of, like, it does a lot of the talking for you about what the story is that you're telling. So try and capture the feeling and try and consider what the background is saying about your story. Like, don't just be against a brick wall. It's boring, and people just won't engage with it as much as they would if there's something going on. And don't be afraid to move around. So, you know, walking and talking, especially if it's selfie style, is good. You know, if you're in a car, for example, don't obviously film yourself when you're driving, but in that example that I shared, you know, that we just asked the staff to just film themselves after an appointment, and they're just literally sat in their car with their phone, which just made really nice, authentic, kind of off the cuff content that they didn't actually have to think about too much. And then lastly, framing. So try and, like, you know, just give some basic guidance on this, because again, you don't want someone to send something and then you can't even see the person's face, or it's all a bit off. So try and position people from the chest up in the frame, leave a bit of space above the head. Try and keep the phone steady. So if you are going to invest in any kit, I'd say, you know, a tripod's great, wireless microphones are great. But if you can't, like, lean the phone against something, or even we call it like dinosaur arms, where you keep your arms just really close to your body so that they're not shaking around as much if you are holding the camera. And then just be comfortable. So make sure that they're not, a lot of people, if they're uncomfortable, they kind of sway around a lot in the shot. So they don't actually, and that becomes distracting. You don't really pay attention to what they're saying. You're just kind of distracted by this moving person. So make sure they're kind of framed nicely and that they're comfortable, and yeah, that you can actually see there's a bit of space around it to give people something to look at while they're actually watching the content as well. So that's that in terms of technical stuff. We've got a nice bit of time now for questions. I think there's a few in the chat. But before we do that, I just wanted to tell you about something that we are launching from the Saltways in September, which is our community studio, which is it's an online platform, and it teaches you how to plan, film, edit, and then launch and review video content using phones. And it will also have resources like risk assessment, consent forms. We're going to open it in September. It will stay open for 2 weeks, then we'll close it back down again. So I'll send an email out in this after this session with a link to join the waitlist, and you'll get 20% off. It's £165, so not too expensive, and then you get access for up to a year, and you also get free membership to, like, the membership space where you can ask questions and come along to Q&As and live stuff as well. So yeah, I'll include that in the link in the follow-up email. Yeah, that's everything. So yeah, we've got a bit of time now for any questions, or if people want to know anything else about the bits of work that we're doing, happy to answer any questions. In the chat, let me just go to the one at the bottom. So are there any AI platforms that you would recommend with recording or capturing content? I feel like authenticity and AI don't really go that well together in terms of, like, this kind of content. I mean, there's great, like, editing. A lot of the editing software now has AI inbuilt into it, so it will do some of the work for you, especially in terms of, you know, adding subtitles and all of that sort of stuff. But I think for actually recording it, I'm not sure there's anything that I've come across, unless Alicia, you know of anything, but not that I've seen with AI inbuilt into it.
Yeah, there's a platform called Veed, VEED. But yeah, I think especially in the social impact industry, we kind of just try and stay away from like that AI, anything like that has too much of a heavy involvement of AI in. Whilst I recognise that obviously it takes a big load off, our audiences certainly don't like it, or the idea of us using AI. So yeah, we kind of don't do that too much or at
Yeah,
all.
I mean, I think there are ways around it in terms of we've toyed with the idea of doing co-created AI projects. So, you know, you might have someone who doesn't want to be identified, but maybe you could co-create using AI software that does animation or images. But I think if you're doing, as long as it's per someone with lived experience and it's there, they have ownership of like how that's created. Um, I think that's okay. But then there is still quite a bit of a grey area about who actually owns the rights to that and who could that image be used, you know, in other ways, which you know is not what you want. Another question is wondering what success Eleshea is seeing for the charity on Blue Sky and whether she would recommend small charities to have presence there.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so with Blue Sky, Emma, we literally started I think either at the end of last year or the start of this year. And the growth is slow, to be honest with you, but it's really, really engaged. And every time a big organization leaves X, we see this mass of people kind of coming to Blue Sky, especially in the charity industry. And I think I read something that over 60% of people, of charities, sorry, have either stopped or cut back their use of X because, as I'm sure you have all experienced as well, it can be very toxic on there. What I found with Blue Sky is that we've kind of replicated the strategy that we use on X, but interestingly, you will get very niche audiences on Blue Sky that come from kind of like a snowballing of the same types of people coming up. So we have a really engaged tech audience on Blue Sky, which is really interesting because our tech stuff doesn't perform as well on other bigger channels, but it will perform really well on there. So what we did with that was I approached our tech team actually and said, listen, we've got this audience that's really interested in tech. If any of you have Blue Sky accounts, we'd love to share your content on there. And that's been working really well. So same with LinkedIn, I think. Smaller audiences, but much more engaged. And I think engagement is a better value than large audiences. So yeah, I would recommend, but you have to be where your audiences are. So and also be wary of the capacity it takes to maintain another channel, because it's very easy to say, we'll just use the same strategy we did on X, but actually it's a great thing about Blue Sky, but you can't really post images unless they have alt text. It has different image and video sizings specifics. So it's really important to take those things into consideration when you do it. But it is a great platform so far, and the audiences on there seem lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, we've started to use it, but again, it's a capacity thing. It's in that it takes a long time to build your audience on there. Another question is that they work with quite quiet and shy people. Do you have any tips on improving confidence for people who might especially struggle with getting in front of camera or feeling like they don't have anything to say, interesting to say? I think like co-creation is always a really good way around this. So instead of just saying to someone like, I'm going to film you, can you film yourself saying this, or can I film you? Instead, you start with the why again, like we're going to create some content to help us to achieve this, like, could you help with that? So it's almost like they're thinking, oh, well, I should do this, or yeah, I can do that because it's actually something I'm passionate about. And then just make it feel like it's a conversation. So, even if you just turn on the camera and you kind of if you're doing it on your phone, for example, you've got your phone there, but you're sort of speaking to them off camera, and you're saying, first let's talk about anything else, and you get them comfortable, and then even things like saying, you'll get to see it before it gets shown anywhere, you'll have control over the final cut. Just gives people a bit more confidence. Or I'll say, I'm interviewing you for 10 minutes, I'm only going to use a minute of this, so please don't overthink it too much what you're saying. But the biggest thing for me is it's all about co-creation and letting people feel like they're really part of their journey, rather than you just kind of turning up to film them, like they've had input in what it is that they're going to be filming, that you're filming basically. Another question, would you say employees filming themselves is more effective than the social teams filming the employees? Um, I don't think it really makes too much difference. I don't know what you think, Alicia, but I think whichever they're most comfortable with. So I think the thing is with employees and filming themselves is that they can do it when they've got time rather than you trying to get two lots of teams schedules together. And that they'll just start capturing them stuff themselves as well. So it's giving them confidence. But um I guess with the social teams filming, you've got more control over the technical side of things. But I think what we've said throughout this session is like that's not the most important thing. It's actually just the content. So, um, yeah, I would say probably filming themselves would be better in terms of capacity and authenticity. But if it's someone that's really nervous, and obviously having a social team film them is going to be better than not at all. Don't know if you want to add anything to that, Alicia.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think, certainly externally, I don't think it makes a huge difference. But in terms of the comfort of the person, some people feel more comfortable filming themselves, or some people feel more comfortable being filmed. So I think it might make a bit of a difference to quality that you get in terms of how at ease the person feels. But we've done both, and I don't think it makes a huge difference engagement wise.
Yeah. Question on any recommendation of safeguarding any content regarding children who can't be filmed, any interesting formats or ways around this. Yeah, this is tricky, obviously, if it's children that cannot be filmed. Obviously, you want to make sure that anyone, like I said, that is capturing content for you, does understand the consent process and what that involves, and making sure that anybody that is filmed can give their fully informed consent. We've got further resources on this, so can talk about that separately offline if people want to. Um, there's ways around it in that you can, if it genuinely doesn't identify people, you can film children's like feet, you can film their hands, you can film the backs of them. Again, there's still a bit of grey area around that. Like, is that ethical? If they haven't consented to that, I'm not sure. I think a better way around it is to have, instead, I would get the service delivery staff to talk about the experiences that they've had with young people in a way that isn't identifiable, because then you're still bringing to life the impact that you're having on young people without putting them at risk in any way of actually filming them. Um, yeah, again, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Alicia.
Yeah, I just popped in the chat that this is something not so much with the children issue, but more if we're covering like a crisis zone, a war zone, or something that's so like for example, we've done something on witchcraft in Ghana, or tech. It's quite difficult to visualize sometimes. So, and if something's too graphic, or too violent, we will use illustration. So often we'll commission freelancers to do that. But with children, where I've worked before, I was at UNICEF before, we use things like drawings and stuff like that. So it's actually something that the children have created. And it's still really engaging, and you're not kind of going against consent or exposing, young people.
Great, yeah. I think that's it. I think we've gone through the questions. Someone asked about editing software. Um, we used to recommend CapCut, but actually they've recently changed their terms and conditions, and there's some uncertainty around who owns uh, the things that you create. So since then, we've been recommending Clipchamp, which is part of Microsoft, which doesn't have the automatic cloud storage, which is something you need to be mindful of if you are editing content. Um, so yeah, and it's very user friendly. I mean, I think quite a lot of people use Canva as well. That's free. You can edit within that. But I would say Clipchamp is a good one. iMovie, or also there's a free version of Adobe that you can kind of get started on. So yeah, there's loads out there. I think the most important thing is just finding something that you're comfortable with and that makes sense to you, because if you're using it, that then there's loads of free, YouTube videos on how to use various bits of editing software. I would just look at the ethical side of it. So just make sure whatever software you choose, that the images that you create, or the footage that you share, isn't going to be used for any other purposes. Yeah, someone's just put that Tech Trust does 4 years of Adobe Premiere for 25 quid, which is amazing. So there you go. do that. It's quite a hefty piece of software to get your head around, but once you've got your head around it, it's really, yeah, it's great. That's what all of our professional editors use. Yeah, so that's we've come up to an hour now. So thank you ever so much for everyone to join, and we will send the recording and the links to stuff, and hopefully you found it helpful. And yeah, we've got loads more workshops coming up, so keep in touch and keep an eye on our social media channels. And we always want recommendations as well if there's other topics that you'd like covered, anything that's kind of linked to content. So let us know, let me know on LinkedIn or via email if there's anything else you would like covering. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.